Did you know that by 2050, we will face a global food production shortfall of 20%? Yet a third of all food produced is still thrown away. What if the solution to our global food crisis is maggots? Yes, it's our most squeamish podcast episode ever as we tackle food loss, waste management, and addressing the global food security, which is a $1 trillion issue with an unexpected hero, the humble maggot. We'll unpack how a shipping container filled with millions of maggots and powered by cutting-edge automation can transform food scraps from cities and businesses into valuable protein and fertiliser, closing the loop on waste and creating new opportunities for agriculture. Along the way, we'll discuss the realities of deep tech innovation, the urgent need for circular solutions, and why rethinking our relationship with the icky insects might be one of the smartest moves we can make for the planet. Welcome to Emerging Tech Unpacked, a podcast that unpacks emerging tech topics and careers with diverse perspectives. My name is Lucy Lin, and today I'm excited to interview a farmer turned tech trailblazer who is also a self-proclaimed Maggot Lady, Olympia Yarger, the founder and CEO of GOTERRA. Welcome to Emerging Tech Unpacked podcast, Olympia. Welcome to another episode of the Emerging Tech Unpacked podcast. My name is Lucy Lin, and today we are going to be talking about insects, robots, food waste, and the circular economy with our expert, Olympia Yarger. Olympia is the founder and the CEO of GOTERRA, and she's also the 2023 ACT Australian of the Year, and she's also had a fly named after her by Australia's National Science Agency, CSIRO. Olympia, I think you're over accomplished, but welcome to the Emerging Tech Unpacked podcast.
Good to have you. It's great.
Well, let's talk about the beginning, because I think you're a fascinating woman. I'm sure the listeners are going to be on this incredible journey with you as well. But you actually started as a farmer, and now you are a tech founder. Now, I have to say, in my head, this feels like a very unusual career path. Can you explain to us how you got from farming to now a tech founder and how you did it?
Yeah, I'm still a farmer. I just need technology to farm the kind of animal that I farm. And so when I was younger and left school, I just started in agriculture. And when I went to come back to agriculture in my later life, I found insects, and there wasn't a way to farm insects that worked. It was all manual. You can't farm a billion things manually. And so I had to invent a machine to do that job. So still a farmer, just using technology to do the farming. That's all.
Oh, and I hear these insects that you use is maggots. Would you call yourself a maggot farmer?
Yeah. In fact, that's what I'm called very often. Maggot Lady, Maggot Farmer, sometimes Maggot Girl, which I take as a compliment.
Wow. You have to put these on T-shirts and your signature, that's your moniker. So
Indeed.
So being a farmer and from a farming background, I hear that sustainability is very important to you. Can you explain why it is and what's that linkage?
Look, Australia is, we write songs about it, we tell poems about it. It's the sunburnt country. And so I think it's easy to believe that our very hot summers and our very wet moments in time are somehow indelible to our land. That isn't true. This country is struggling under the weight and in the face of climate change, and agriculture is the front line of that fight. We need to be able to produce food. We currently produce all of our food outside, and so all challenges to climate and removal of the predictability of our climate is dangerous to our future. And so and it's also dangerous to farming and the way of life that comes from being part of an agricultural industry. So for me, it's self-preservation. I want to keep farming. I believe in farming and I believe in making food. It's a passion of mine. And so if you care about food, you should care about farming and the climate. So here I am.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I don't think it's just Australia as well. Like obviously around the world, so many countries are, combating floods and wildfires and, things like that. So I don't think it is just an Australia issue. It is definitely a global issue. And certainly you lived in the US for 14 years, was it?
Yep, that's right.
And can you also maybe give us a bit of a comparison there in terms of, do you see a lot of differences between the US and how they're, using sustainability versus elsewhere?
Yeah, like I said, I think the reason why I characterized the opinion of Australia is that we have largely wrapped up climate change as Australia always burns, Australia always floods. That's not to say that climate change doesn't affect the world, obviously, but it's how different countries believe climate is being affected is the problem. In the US, when I first got there, one of the really striking things is that nobody had a tank on their house, and what they considered a dry summer would have been a really, really wet summer for Australia. And that was shocking to me because I hadn't ever seen that much water everywhere all the time. Water just coming from, everything was always green. Nothing ever went brown, it felt like. And I was in Texas. Just a very different approach to what needs to happen in agriculture in the US. They have better soils, they get more rain, and they're only just now starting to have real challenges to their rainfall and their temperatures, whereas Australia's always had drought. And so we've had to be more innovative. The problem is the droughts are now worse than they were, and the rainfall is less than it was. And so that has further exacerbated a country that already started with fairly low amounts of those things. Whereas in the US, they're only really starting to feel it now. And you can see sometimes them talking about things that for Australia are quite normal, but are starting to be great ideas or new things in a country that's just starting to really feel the impact of climate change.
Oh, okay. So thank you for providing that context. I didn't realize that. So I
Yeah,
think
no, it's all good.
Yeah, no, I think that gives us a better background as well. When I was researching this topic, because, I was like, oh my God, I'm talking to, a maggot farmer who does robotics and all about sustainability. The term circular economy comes up all the time because that's part of the solution that you have. For the benefit of our listeners, can you explain what is the circular economy? Because I do feel like there's a lot of misconceptions and myths to what it is. I'd love to hear it from your perspective.
Yeah. So I think the circular economy is right now we have a linear economy. So things go into our supply chain. There's waste along the way. We throw that waste away and then we make a product. And then when we're done with that product, we throw either its entirety or parts of it away. In a circular economy, that value chain is circular. And so effectively materials are never become waste. Everything is returned back to the supply chain in one way or the other. And in doing so, everything is regenerated. It means that you take less from nature, and it means that you actually have more to grow because you're never sort of removing material from the supply chain. So it's certainly the way we need to start thinking about how we live and manage our world moving forward.
Yeah. And when you were talking about agriculture being, it's all about food. Is this what we should be thinking about all the time for all our foods moving forwards?
Yeah. So there is nothing happened in isolation in the world, right? Like we can imagine that wasting food doesn't really have an impact because, it's just an apple peel or whatever. But if you think about food waste more broadly, we waste 7 million tons of food a year in Australia. Globally, we waste so much food that if food waste was a country, it would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world, second only to China and the US. And that's not including the transport miles of moving food around. And so you've got this interesting thing that we need to sustain ourselves, that we waste with abundance such that it now is impacting the ability for us to grow more of the thing that we need to sustain ourselves. And so the only way to repair that broken system is to get the stuff that is wasted back into the supply chain to make more food again, because we are facing a food production shortfall. We will not be able to produce enough food to feed our population by 2050. We already are overshooting our natural resources every year. And so, we've got to find ways to create circularity in our supply chain.
Yeah. So I did an episode about indoor vertical farming previously, and the topic of transport and how a lot of vegetations are kind of spoilt, before they even leave the farm, but even more so as they're traveling around such a huge country like Australia. And that's when I first discovered, oh my God, this is such a huge issue. And, and it's interesting to think about, well, what about all that food wastage, which could be like 40 to 50%? What do people do with that waste, And I think a lot of it, where does it go? Does it go underground or?
It goes to landfill. So we put it in landfill, which means it gets pushed into a hole. And in that hole, the food waste starts to decompose, which is it's naturally supposed to do. But because we've created so much more food than would naturally be created without this many humans, and we've created more than we need because of the supply chain inefficiencies, that food waste is now creating methane in amounts that is unable to be managed, and it causes massive problems in landfills. It generates all this methane, and that methane then goes on to contribute to climate change and climate pressure. And so that right now we have to build out more infrastructure so that we can process these things out of landfill and recover them before they start doing damage.
Right. Okay. And can you tell me, is this the idea of why you have started GOTERRA to kind of solve some of these issues?
I started GOTERRA because insects are a high protein alternative to soybean and fish meal, which means that they are an opportunity to create a non-volatile commodity that doesn't have a fluctuating price. And put that back to agriculture, which would create stability for agriculture. When I first started with maggots, that was a really great idea. I'm just going to grow some maggots, feed them to chickens, and I'll have made a thing. I didn't realize just how much food the insects would need to eat. And then I didn't know much about waste. I just thought there was lots of it and you'd be able to find it. But waste is distributed where humans are. And so that means there's waste everywhere. And to feed a lot of maggots, you need a lot of waste. And so the great idea didn't actually play out in real life because I had, 100 kilos of maggots, but I was driving around for 3 hours trying to feed them. And so you're like, oh, how does waste manage this problem? And then I'm like, oh, that's why everything's going to landfill, because driving around and picking all this up actually costs a lot of money. And so the flip was, okay, insects are a great idea, but unless you can solve this transport problem, it's not a good idea at all. Insects don't mind being in a box. Let's put the insects in a box and take them to the food waste instead of the other way around. And that's what we've done.
Wow. So you started off with a different idea first, and then you're like, oh, and then you've just encountered this problem. You're like, okay, so I'm going to put the two and two together.
It was the first time I realized that a lot of the things that we consider problems are actually symptoms. And so I used to think that climate change was the problem. It isn't. It's a symptom of our linear economy. We have done this thing. This is an outcome of how we currently manage all of our world. And when you actually solve those problems, then you will inherently solve for climate change. So when we stopped solving for insect protein and making insect protein and started solving for a waste management problem, which is actually the problem. So communities don't have access to waste processing. Communities can't afford access to waste processing. It's infrastructure that's a utility. Everyone needs it. They're usually really big and expensive and take a lot of time to build. Those are problems not having them means that it creates this methane gas problem because everything just goes to landfill. Solve that, and inherently now less methane being made in landfills, and you make this protein thing that turns back to agriculture. So it's just about just how sometimes you can get a little lost on where you think the problem is, and that tail starts wagging the dog instead of the other way around.
Did it take you a long time to kind of figure out, that's how it's supposed to be? And how did you go about that process?
It was just literally so the first couple of years were just trying to get maggots to live in a box. It was way harder than I thought it was going to be. There's no books on how to do it. So it took a long time. I was still working. So I was just tootling about in my garage. But once I got that to work, and then suddenly I'm like, okay, now I can't feed them. So by 2016 was when I figured out, those were 2 years. So 2016 was when I was like, I'm trying to solve the wrong problem, and now I need to solve the actual problem. And that's how we sort of got where we are.
Yeah. Well, I love the idea. Can you talk a little bit about how your idea is, well, first and foremost, revolutionizing the waste industry, and then also how it's also tackling our food waste problem as well?
Yeah, so it's effectively a large insect feedlot. So if you think about it analogous to how we think about cow feedlots, it's a place where you can grow a lot of protein in a very confined space. So it's super efficient. As the technology accepts food waste, so you can walk a bin up to it, or you can drop a truck with a lot of waste and it can be scooped into it. That machine then accepts that waste, processes it, so crunches it up, takes off all the packaging, and then every day feeds the insects that food waste. And so the insects are inside the box, and they are just eating as much food waste as they can. They are, doing the work effectively of all the processing. And then every 10 days, we service the unit by removing those insects and recovering the value again. So it's a true circular economy, because those recovered products come back to our centralized hub, processed and sent back out to agriculture. So we generate revenue at front end with fee-for-service waste management, and then we generate revenue on the back end in product sales.
Yeah. And so for the listeners who can't really imagine what Olympia has just said, it's like this huge box. I don't think it's like a small box. It's a very big box. And, it's a very big box. And pretty much your maggots are kind of like your workers, basically. You're putting all these food waste in there from hospitals and, supermarkets and whatever, hospitality and buildings, whatever food that isn't consumed and is wasted, I guess it goes into the front of the box. And then I'm assuming all the maggots are in the middle, just eating away, processing it. And then it comes out on the other end, and it could go into as livestock for other food. Is that for chickens and for pigs? Is that correct? And then,
yes.
And then goes into fertiliser as well.
That's right. Yeah, you've got it.
Which I think is fascinating in terms of a way of thinking about it. So you use, basically, I think maggots are your workers. Is that right?
Well, they're our farm animals.
Your farm animals. I love it. Getting them to work. And can you tell us a little bit about the technology? This is deep tech stuff. Must be a lot of engineering still that needs to go through, and then AI and things like that. Can you talk us a little bit more about how all that is also being used with the maggots as farm animals?
That's awesome. I think we've had to grow them. They work just like a farm animal. So when we grow sheep, we do the same thing, right? So we put them in a pen, we feed them lots of food, they grow nice and fat, and then we dispatch them to turn them into cutlets. It's very similar.
But there are a lot of technology that goes through this process too.
The actual technology in the machine is an interesting combination in the tech stack, right? So you have software, hardware, and biological. All three of those technologies have to be synchronized for the job to be done properly. So I think there's a lot of conception about the fact that it's just maggots. How hard
Yeah.
can it be to put them in the
Yeah.
box?
Oh, and I can imagine it being very hard because these are big. Like these are kind of like containers.
It's a 20-foot shipping container that can do a ton and 1.7 tons of food waste a day.
Wow.
And that's a lot of insects in a very small space. So you've got to manage heat, humidity, respiration, and a whole bunch of other things that are important to a living thing being able to sustain itself in that environment. And then you've got to convey this food waste into that area so that they can eat it. And so the hardware is industrialized hardware. There's no fine motor robotics in here. No eyes. It doesn't talk to me, much to my disgust. And the software, we're just starting to add some really cool AI and vision components to what we do, where we can identify contamination, and the data is starting to learn from itself so that we can, the machine can do more and more of its own thinking. And that's been really exciting because the more autonomous this machine is, the more efficient it is, the more affordable it is for our customers to use it, and the better data they get on the backside. And that's the name of the game at the moment.
Wow. And so how much are you so how much how much food waste can you process, and then what comes out on the other side? What's the amounts there as well?
Yeah, so 25% of all the waste in becomes frass, which is the insect manure, and then 8% of all the waste in becomes insect protein. So the insect protein starts as a live thing, and then, of course, with moisture reduction and the drying process and such, you end up with a lot less, but that's the process.
Wow, amazing. So it comes out on the other side as fertiliser that you can build new plants with, and then you can also eat it. And other animals can eat it. So that's the definition of, I think, a real circular economy then.
It's not a bad day. Yeah.
I just think the idea of it is really interesting because I've read some of your materials, and you said the waste management industry hasn't changed significantly in 500 years. And here's your solution, which is a huge alteration to that. But why do you think the industry has been so resistant to innovation?
It's not necessarily resistant so much as it's just been easier. Like while we had a lot of space around our cities and we could just take stuff out of town and drop it off and it wasn't far, why would you try? Innovation only needs to occur or is generated or inspired when there's a need. When there's no need, you don't need to do anything differently to how you've been doing it. Mm-hmm. But if you think about when I left Sydney, Campbelltown was a separate city, and you would drive through paddocks before you got to the rest of Sydney, right? Mm-hmm. Now there is nothing discernible between Campbelltown and the CBD. It is straight urban sprawl from the edge of Campbelltown all the way through, and it's continuing to come. So where would you put a landfill in Sydney now? You wouldn't. It would be well outside of Campbelltown. It'd be so much closer to Mossvale than it would be to Campbelltown, to Sydney in the end. And so now you're starting to see what the problem is. You can't drive around the CBD of Sydney and pick up that waste and then affordably transport it outside of the city limits of Sydney to get it managed. And that's where you're starting to see us need to innovate this problem, because those costs aren't going down, and the need isn't going away because we still have lots of people, but the ability to do that transport leg is diminishing. And so that's why it hasn't changed until sort of the last 30 or 40 years, with people starting to think about how else can we try and manage waste. The challenge is that innovation in industries that are relative to utility are difficult to disrupt, because you're disrupting big contracts that are really, really long term, like sometimes up to 10, 20 years. And those contracts are baked into how a community lives. And so the likelihood that folks will want to adopt technology that would in any way disrupt or create pressure or pain for a community is a concern, right? So one of the things that we've had to manage is, our pilot site in Canberra, there's days where we might make a mistake and then you've got a smell. Now if I take away the smell bit and I just go, sometimes when we're developing our technology, we make a mistake.
Yeah.
Everyone in the tech startup world goes, oh, that's fine. And I'm like, well, when we make a mistake, tons of food waste spills on the floor and there's maggots on the ceiling. And that is not something that anyone wants to live next door to. And so the challenges of scaling a startup like this are far more intricate, because your license to operate is much more restricted from a really early stage. You don't get this just fail fast, fail often. It's there's no opportunity to have that real freckless approach to your technology innovation. You've got to be regulated from day one. You've got to be super careful with how you manage your interactions with the community. And you've got to really, really be transparent and resilient to failure. So it's a difficult industry to innovate for.
Yeah. Wow. There's so many things there, Olympia. I love that. Where do we go next? My goodness. Well, first and foremost, you talked about the landfill, and I agree with you. As communities continue to build, people do want to live closer to cities, and then there's more houses there. You can't have landfills there, right? It's getting pushed out further and further probably. And so something like this is quite interesting, because you are a solution that is inside a big tower block, say. I mean, I've seen it, and the one I went to is the middle of the city, and it was in a very big tower block, and it was just placed at the bottom, basically.
Yeah.
And, you put a shipping container in there, and then, it's getting all the food waste of 3 different tower blocks. So is it one big tower block? I'm not sure.
The whole precinct. Yeah.
Oh, the whole precinct. Amazing. Yeah. And I can imagine it being a lot of food wastage there, because there's a lot of restaurants, there's a lot of buildings, and there's a lot of cafes, and things like that. So, which I can see why this is, needed. But at the same time, you're saying, well, if you fail, if something goes wrong, you're going to be next to bad smell, maggots all over the place, whatever else, food everywhere. That's not good. So your ability to kind of make a little mistake is not possible by the sound of it.
It's not an easy mistake. We don't have the luxury of hiding our failures. We can't blow up a chipset and nobody know. We can't have power go out and nobody know. What's interesting about working in technologies in this space is that humans rely on them so much that they need them to be completely invisible. We don't want to smell our food waste. We don't want to smell our waste. We don't want to see our waste. We don't want to know where it goes. We don't want to see how it gets there. We never want to smell it. We want it just to go away. And so when you're trying to innovate on that, you have to actually still meet that need for the community to have that be the experience. Now that feels unreasonable, but that is the truth of what you're going to be trying to serve and what your customers are going to want. And that's a reasonable request. It doesn't mean you can't fail or that you're not going to. It's just that your failures will be far more apparent to everyone. And so the kind of business you're building has to deviate from the sort of how we frame being in startups. If you think about how the Australian ecosystem frames being in startups, where you say all these really goofy pseudo-American things that we think make sense, like grind through it and fail fast, fail often. And it's I don't want to fail on purpose with a 7.5 ton robot. I actually want to be really careful about how I do that, because it could kill someone and it could also make a big mess. And so the understanding of like leaning into failure is important. But with industries like mine, you have to instead be very considered about how you manage failure and how you've built a business that's going to manage that failure. Because otherwise it's a bit of a mess.
Yeah. So you're in the deep tech. Can you tell us a definition of what deep tech is compared to, say, other types of technology, which is like maybe software, because they're the ones you can say, oh, fail fast, fail often, etc. But you're in deep tech, which is a very different type.
Yeah, I don't know if my definition of what deep tech is the same as everyone else's, and I know now we've got Folk, which is first of a kind tech, and is that the same? Who knows? I think sometimes they're just great ways to create investor propositions and premise. But for me, deep tech is a technology that hasn't existed before, that requires a undetermined amount of time to actually discover if it's an actual thing. And then before you can even start the process of figuring out if it can be commercialized. So to me, deep tech has this like ideation stage that's very similar to sort of a conventional framework for engineering ideation, where you're like, I'm going to just try this thing. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, will it work this way? Oh, I don't know. Until you get out of that, sort of really early stage ideation cycle with something that you think is legit. And then you go, okay, now we'll try a prototype actual. And I think that's a difficult technology to complement with VC, because it feels longer. The bet might feel as big, but like the payback doesn't have true, like it's a bit uncertain as to when that payback will be. And so, it's a different sort of landscape to be in, for sure.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is fundraising and trying to raise money. And I know that you've raised $27 million. So let's celebrate that first and foremost. I think that's a fantastic achievement by a solo female founder. Well done to you. But you're right. Like deep tech is a lot harder to try and raise money for. And when you say VC, venture capital, they don't fund as much deep tech innovations like yourself, because it takes a long time. Like how long and how many iterations has it taken you to build GOTERRA? Like what, 10 plus years already? And yours is a very unique proposition. So you need to create that world first uniqueness, and then it will take a long time. And then a lot of all the investors and the funders, and they're like, oh, I don't have 10 years, or I don't have, by 10 years, they want to fund and also exit already, so.
Well, by 5. Yeah. So
there you go.
We received our first venture check in 2018. And so, 7 years we've been building GOTERRA, 6 and some change. I think when I talk about VC with deep tech, I talk about both the journey that a venture capitalist and the founding team go on, but also the investment. And yes, venture capital, it has since 2020 has become more suited to, I give 4 dudes in a WeWork $2 million in 3 years. They'll make me 10 times that. Off we go. We'll exit one way or the other in 5. We've sort of, a lot of ventures lost what it was able to do in the early 90s and 80s, where it could actually invest in hardware and did, and now wants that sort of much more SaaS-driven model of return. But there are great venture capitalists out there that are really focused on deep tech, are super interested in climate and agriculture, and I think there's ways to make it work for venture for sure.
Yeah. Well, good luck to you. Hopefully that will come, and so you can continue this great innovation. So, like I said, I have seen the black soldier larvae or maggots in person, and I was down there at the bottom of one of these tower buildings for the entire precinct, and I saw your shipping container of box of I don't even know how many there were in there. It would just say thousands, hundreds of thousands of maggots. Like,
there's millions.
millions. My
Millions.
goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was a fascinating experience. So it was a tour, and so they got out a box of, saying here's a food waste. So it was like, carrots, cucumbers, all these food waste, I think it takes 2 weeks. Can correct me if I'm wrong, but then it turns into compost, and then there was like all these squiggly maggots in there, and then they gave you a glove. So I put on a glove. And then they were like, stick your hand in there. And I swear to God, I stared at it for a good 5 minutes before I got the courage to stick my own hand in there. But it was a very interesting experience. Like, it was really warm and, which was unexpected. It was like a super hot heater, basically.
Yeah.
Can you explain that entire process? Like, is it 2 weeks when the beginning to end of, and then, how does the composting work as well?
So they consume the food waste, but in doing so, like, they need the heat to keep them happy. And so they work as a colony. Each tray is its own colony. And then the machine itself, everything that's in the machine is actually functioning as a colony. As a colony, they are generating their own heat source. And they're creating an environment where it's optimized for feed. So they're creating sort of a very humid environment, and they're increasing that heat so that they can keep eating. So, that's what you're feeling. They can run 10 degrees hotter than the ambient temperature, which in the units is about 32 degrees. So they do feel really hot, and that helps them break down and consume that food waste. As they're eating, the food is moving through their gut, and then it's coming out the other side, excreted as manure. And so over a 10-day period, the insects are going to get really big, and they're going to excrete a lot of manure. And so by the end of it, you've got maggots sitting in manure, and you sift the two from each other. The frass we do send to composting currently, because it needs to meet the composting requirements for manure, and then the insects are processed according to Australian regulation called Feed Safe. So, it's a fairly simplistic process considering all that's going on, and replicating it like Mother Nature does is not easy, but largely it's just maggots eating food waste and then pooing a lot. It's not
what a
sexy.
Solution.
Look at me go.
I think it's fascinating, and I'm wondering if you need to study, like, have a petition against maggots, because I think in lots of people's heads you're like, because I've been to places where that obviously there's a lot of food, like say if you're out camping or etc. And then there's food that some people are naughty people, they leave behind. And then there's like maggots all over the place. And then it's just that ick a little bit, I have to say, in terms of the feeling of maggots, and makes your skin crawl a little bit. But I'm wondering if we need to have a bit of a marketing campaign for them, because in this context, like, they sound like superhuman farm workers, in my opinion. So,
but like, now you've met one, do you have the same opinion?
Yeah, you know what? Now I know what they can do. I feel like I've been educated in terms of what they're actually doing, and I think this is an incredible feat of human nature, basically. I had no idea, as someone who may have seen them outside and it's just like, there's a lot of maggots everywhere, etc. Yeah. But now I know that they're actually doing good for the environment and for nature overall. I think I will have my mind changed about, and now knowing more about them, speaking to you, etc. So yeah, and I think that is probably part of that educational, marketing campaign, that of having a better rap for what maggots can do or who they are.
We have to remember that you're Australian, and so Australians hate flies and we hate maggots. Like, that's a national position that we have about flies and maggots. Like, we're the only country that could sing the song to a commercial for a fly spray, right? Like the Raid ad. And so I'm not trying to win over the whole country at the same time, but at one person at a time, every time we can introduce people to what insects can do, people are converted, right? So like even at one of our customer sites at Lend-Lease, they made a whole mascot, Maggie the maggot, and
really?
she sits above all their bins so that they know where to put their food waste. And I think, we forget that nature exists on purpose, right? For us, anything that we find inconvenient or not useful, we want to go away. And so insects have been part of that. We want them to go away. All of the sprays about insects are about going away. So rid, off, all of those things are about making insects go away. That's centuries of cultural bias around what insects' role in the world is. If we had no flies of any kind, we would be in a lot of trouble. And so, I think we're just, slowly but surely getting the reputation of the humble maggot back restored where it should be.
Oh, bless.
Yeah.
So, Olympia, you don't have a technology background, and yet, I've seen these shipping containers and things like that. How did you go through all your learnings, like since you've been building your company? How are you learning how to do everything? What's your learning process? It sounds difficult. So I want to know.
I think I'm probably lucky that I didn't know what I was doing, because I didn't know I couldn't do it, and certainly worked with quite a lot of folks that were like, I don't think this will be possible, and then a bunch of folks who did think that would be true. And so I had basic tech understanding. I could weld a thing, and I know how motors work and stuff from being in ag, but it just made sense in my brain. And so and like I said, I just didn't know any better about what was or wasn't possible. And so there's a liberation to that, right? Like if you're an expert in something, without knowing it, you have a bias as to what you can or can't achieve in the context of that field. I had none. And so, there are pros and cons for both, obviously, but I was blissfully unaware that things were hard. I just did them.
I think that's a blessing in disguise, is it? If you had known it would be this difficult, do you think you would have pursued this?
Probably, but it would have been different, right? Like I would have gone about it a different way. I would have thought about it a different way. Whereas the way it's been going, it's just sort of been better. And I think we've been able to move the tech a lot further forward faster, because we haven't been sort of laid down with preconceived opinions about what would and wouldn't work. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's great. So it's probably good to be in blissfully, like, I want to say blissfully ignorance or something like that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, no. The blind ignorance is far better innovation premise than PhD of excellence. I'm going to hold it to that. That's what I reckon. Yeah.
I think you need all sorts of people, and I love this way. I think it's very interesting, and great solution so far. So in your in your intro deck, it states that by 2050 we're going to be in a food shortage crisis, and it says that we're expected to face a 20% food shortfall globally. You're telling me that we're already in that, which I think scares me, but can you paint us a picture of the future and more about a food shortage?
Yeah. So there's a concept called overshoot day. Overshoot day is basically where the man or humanity's demands on nature exceed the Earth's ability to produce. So this year, overshoot day happened in March. So effectively, Australia consumed the full volume of what it is naturally able to produce by 3 months into the year, and I think that's a huge issue when you think about how much we're having to produce and provide. I think the other reason, so CSIRO and PwC have done a report on this. There's quite a number of bits of work that the CSIRO has done talking about this problem, but effectively, again, like I said, we farm things outside largely, wherever you are unable to predict and rely on climate to do what it's supposed to do. So spring, autumn, winter, summer, all having, certain rainfall types, certain temperatures, then your ability to produce food is challenged. So funny little things like the fecundity of mammals is diminished after 40 degrees. Now, fecundity is fertility, and that means anytime the temperature is going over 40 degrees, most sheep and cattle will not mate, they won't reproduce. And so now you've got challenges with what time of the year are you going to put your sheep to get pregnant, your cows to get pregnant. Now, historically, we've done that at a time when we knew that those lambs were going to have lots of food because spring meant lots of rain and autumn meant lots of rain. Well, now those rain patterns are not reliable anymore. And so, moving your fertility time to try and match rain patterns is no longer as reliable as it used to be, and it's going to get worse moving forward. So the predictability of production of food is going away. You add to that massive floods, massive fires, massive droughts, and now you've got real problems around food. So the head count is still being done on what we've lost in beef cattle in northern Australia right now, but it is immense and it is significant. Now, that's an economic cost to our country, but that is also a food production cost. And that's climate change. We all know there is going to be more of that. And that means that how we produce food, where we produce food now, the accessibility of food is going to be severely challenged by 2050.
Wow. That's a scary image, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
How can we solve for that, do you think?
Oh, we have to fight like hell. Because right now, if you look, I think there's been a recent report has come out with JP Morgan. They believe that 2 degrees is inevitable. 2 degrees, human life starts to be dramatically impacted. That is disastrous. And so, this is the time, it's a really difficult thing to say because folks don't want to, Australians don't like upsetting the apple cart. We don't want to put ourselves out there, but it is fight time. It is time to demand we do something. It is time to make personal consumerism choices. It is about lending your voice to those who've been in the climate fight for some time, because this is a collective global problem that will not be nobody's getting out of this. You can be as rich as you like, but you can't escape the impacts of what this will be. And so I think we all just have to, there's no shorter shower solution. This isn't an individual problem. This is a global collective problem. And we have to do that together.
I agree. Like, I think this is a global issue. It's not just something that's contained in Australia, say, but it is something that is globally we are needing to work on together. Hence why there are talks about if this planet's not good, we might have to go outside planet like Mars or something. And I'm like, well, why don't we look after our first planet first rather than needing 100%. To do that?
It's weird. It's weird, right? It's like, who goes to Cubapedia and says, I'd love to live out here? And then they go, isn't Mars pretty? And I'm like, we have the most beautiful planet in the solar system, actual. And you're all looking over the fence going, what's over there? And it's like, what about here? How are we so short-sighted that we're like, oh, well, this one's broken, we should go somewhere else. I don't want to go anywhere else. I like what we have. And I think it's such a crime that we're disposable in even that context. It's so sad.
Look, I really love space as well, and I do think that space, for sure, I would like to explore that. But that doesn't mean that we have to completely not neglect what we currently have, because I think there is definitely still lots of opportunity for us to try and amend what we're doing now to also, explore other things. But yeah, so thank you for that. I think it's a scary future and it's going to make me think about what I need to do. And hence why I think it's important for even me who has a marketing communications background. What can I do to kind of like, do my bit? And having a podcast, I think, is my medium. And my medium is that I'm choosing to want to profile people like yourself who's passionate about this, because I think it is an important conversation to have. So,
Sure. 100%.
So I want to turn back to you. I heard that GOTERRA was an idea drawn on the back of a napkin, which I think is it's probably a typical story of entrepreneurship, isn't it? Everyone's drawing on the back of napkins. But what was the most pivotal moment that shaped your career as a founder so far in your journey?
There's been a few. I think, I think the first round of venture capital was probably the most pivotal thing that sort of happened. We wouldn't be here if I hadn't been able to raise that. And I think there's a lot to be said for what the people that believed in us then at that stage, which was like unquestionably early, that belief has, really sort of given us what we needed to keep going. And I think we still leverage it somehow even now. And so, I would say the first round would have been the most pivotal point.
Yeah, no, that's great. And what keeps you keep motivating? Because it's a hard slog being a founder. It's a hard slog needing to raise money all the time. It's a hard slog if some of the technology doesn't work, or if community complains about smells or maggots everywhere and things like that. And, it's also probably a hard slog because waste management, I can imagine it being a very historically stagnant industry. What keeps you motivated when you're facing such resistance and skepticism?
Yeah, I don't have one thing. I vacillate between being inspired by my staff, inspired by the problem, and discouraged by all of it, and just doing it with brute force. I don't think there's one thing. I think it's dangerous to try and manage the challenges of being a founder and sort of the reserves of resilience that you need with one thing. Like, I don't meditate. I could give a crap about yoga. I don't do work-life balance. It's not a thing that I care about. I love work. Therefore, my life is balanced. Like, that's me. I don't expect my staff to be that way, but like, that's where I get my joy from. And so equally, it's where all my pain comes from as well. And I tend to, when it gets really hard, I don't really need anything then aside from just to deal down and go harder. Like, I just, my sort of way of managing those things is just to go, all right, this hurts. I don't like it. There's no way through it, no way around it. It's not going to stop. And so I'm going to have it. It's going to happen. And so brute force is as much something that I use to manage what we've got to go through as any of the other more inspiring things that you use, like, oh, my team's great, which they are. And, oh, I love what we're building, which I do, and I care so much about the planet. Yes. And then some days it all sucks and everything is hard and I hate everyone. And the only thing I can do is just put one more foot in front of another and send another email and fight another fight. And tomorrow, maybe it'll be better, probably not, and just go. So I think we tell ourselves a few too many fibs around, staying inspired and having resilience to that. I think sometimes you just got to know there's going to be days where you'll have nothing left and you're going to be like that little marathon guy with the little foil around his body, and all you can do is just stagger forward. And as long as you're still falling forward, you're doing just fine. And if you fall down, take a minute, stand back up, keep going. Someone will get you an orange sooner or later and you'll be back on your way.
Oh, I love that. My God, I can't believe, that should be your motto, brute force.
We'll put it on a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Nice.
On my phone, as my screen cover, it says, "It doesn't matter how slow you go, as long as you don't stop."
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's
Women
on
are
my
good
phone
at
as a
that.
reminder to myself.
Yeah, but have you noticed that women have stuff more like that though? I reckon most women resonate with that kind of sentiment rather than like aim
Brute force.
high. Yeah, no, well, brute force is
I need to change that to brute force.
brute force is just a more aggressive version of that though, right? Like it's just, yeah.
I want to talk about that. Like, you're a very outspoken woman. I think I'm an outspoken woman. Like,
Good.
throughout my entire career, everyone's like, "Oh, you're too direct." I've got all these performance reviews from ex-bosses going, "Oh, you're too direct. You speak your mind." And I'm like,
Wow.
how is that a bad thing, honestly?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Go to hell. I just, it's look, there, I think, okay, I'll preface this entire rant with it is important to have self-awareness. It is super important to learn and listen. Like, don't show up to tell people what to do, show up to learn from them. I absolutely agree with those things, but I am at my absolute limit of hearing about and having it come to me, this just ongoing, relentless request for me to stop being anything that is confrontational. And I appreciate that it's easier for everyone else if they don't have to have any confrontation and any conflict. And I understand that because of that, those two words are considered in Australian culture, particularly aggressive words, right? If you say, "I don't mind conflict," everyone's like, ugh, like that's you like to fight. And it's like, no, conflict is an engagement. And it is okay to have an engagement that is conflicting opinions, and two people who are professionals, you should want that work environment. If you're shying away from conflict driven conversations in a technology startup, you guys are drinking your own bathwater and stroking each other off, and you should all just go the hell home. Like, it's just insane. And each time a woman tries to make a space at the table, everyone goes, "You can sit here, but not loudly, and don't tell us what to do," because and then they make that our fault, right? You're too direct. I'm like, thank you, that's great. "Oh, no, I don't like it because it does this." And you're like, "Oh, okay, so you would prefer if I didn't speak directly because it creates an impression or a feeling for you." That is entirely a you problem. And I'm happy to have that discussion, like how I can make sure that my directness doesn't make you feel small, but I'm not going to stop my directness, because the you feeling small part is a you problem. And it's so hard to manage that narrative like really well, because inherently I can guarantee that there's a percentage of humans that are listening to this and they're asking, "But is she mean though? Is she being mean when she's being direct? Is she being not nice to people? Is that the problem?" Right. And so we're always second guessing women when they take on attributes that we have bequeathed to men and we're not allowed to have. Because if I was a dude, my directness would be something people loved about me.
I think it would be seen as confident. It would be seen as someone who's got authority. And then you hear it from a woman's mouth and you're like, "Oh, she's too direct, gosh, she's brash."
Bitchy, bossy, bitchy and aggressive. Yeah. Every time. And it's just, so now, I still struggle. There's times where I want to do the Australian thing where it's like, "I don't care, I'm really direct." And then like do these little like disclaimers as sidebars on the back, like I do mindfulness and I try, and if I get it wrong, I make apologies and like whatever. And it's like, no, that's not the point. The accusation exists to stop women from moving forward. It's not given to us in any kind of meaningful feedback or any with any intention for us to do better. It is always given. That kind of feedback is always given as a shut down or a push down or a go back where, don't know you're in the wrong spot, go out of that. And it's a push back and a defensive posture. And it comes from women and men to women all the freaking time.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, okay, that continues because we allow it. Because as soon as someone says you're direct, the first thing out your mouth is, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to be.
Yeah, I'm going to apologize for it. And I went, what?
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I actually did mean to be direct. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. That's true. Yeah. But I did mean to be direct. And so there's a difference in that so far I'm still only 30% of the time do I get it right, where I don't apologize first and then try and have the discussion, and where I instead go, I meant to be direct. I did not mean for that to have a negative impact on you. I'm happy to talk about that problem, but I will not stop the direct bit. And that's, it's just super hard to do because, again, your brain is calibrating like, am I being mean? Am I not listening? Am I not learning? Am I like, it's like insane pressure for us to be these amazing, incredible, self-motivating, turned-on human beings, and nobody else is doing that work except women.
Brilliant put. I'm gonna clap for you. I think that's fantastic. Go on your rant, Olympia. Do it.
Let me just pop my soapbox to the side.
That's so good. Okay, I love that. I agree because, I get the same thing throughout my career as well, 20 plus years, all different environments,
100%. Yep.
Corporate, academia, startups, my God, everywhere. So I'm a bit sick of hearing about it. But I agree with you. I think it's probably how society sees us too. And that could be a societal problem. I'm not sure. but I think it's something that I think maybe society isn't comfortable with seeing strong women. And I think that's something I would like to try and change because, I feel like it's about time that they should be comfortable with this. And I feel like more voices like us, I think hopefully will change that narrative and that thought as well. So
I'll stand with you. There'll be lots of other women. It's in numbers. If all of us stand up and say, no, thank you, what are they going to do?
Yeah, exactly. Well, they may change their mind. Can you believe that?
And they may not, but it only gets more painful from here. So
I love to hear your thoughts about how, you're an entrepreneur. What advice do you have for either, women entrepreneurs who wants to pursue the space or even entrepreneurs who wants to tackle a massive problem like what you're doing in the climate or food security area?
I think that there's a couple of things that you've got to really set right with yourself before you sort of kick this thing off if you want to do well at it. One, I think you've got to actually settle into the idea that you want to be good at something. You've got to, and so again, I'm speaking to the Australians in the room, but particularly women, I don't think we are spending enough time recognizing what we want. So we spend a lot of time, what do you want to be? What kind of leader you want to be? And people will be like, oh, I want to be a good leader, or I want to be good with staff or whatever. And I'm just like, what is that? Right. And so I think you've got to actually, if you're going to do something big and you're going to do something that matters, then you have to actually decide why you, because it's going to be your voice that's coming through that project. It's going to be your intention, your desire, your passion, that you are the only one feeding it for the first couple of years of its life. And if you don't know what the hell you're doing there in that moment and what your voice is trying to say, then largely you will just sort of feel like you never really get there. And so you have to just actually say, and I think even if you can't figure out more pointedly, you just have to be like, I really want to be good at this. I want this to be the thing that does what it needs to do in the world. I want it to be what I see. I want that to happen in the world. And you have to own it, because if you don't own it, then you may as well give birth to a kid, drop it off at the mall and watch while people walk past it. Like, you are leaving it without a mother, you're leaving it without a voice, you're leaving it without the thing that will grow it and drive it. And I think women sometimes don't recognize just how important knowing that first is. I think the second part is you've got to really realize that it will not be easy, and I don't give a rat's what anyone says. And I know there's some female founders out there right now that are not happy with me, because I do say that women founders get less, and they're like, oh no, I've never felt discriminated against and I find it easy to raise money. And I'm like, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard, and you are the best. But statistically, you are an anomaly that does not exist in the data. Everyone else is struggling. And for those of us who are raising, to suggest that we're not, it's not happening because it's not happening to us, it's just bizarre. You will find it intolerably hard to raise, and the injustice of that will become more and more apparent the longer you do it. And that is something that you can either use to fuel you, or it will tear you apart. And so really realize that your resilience isn't going to be as tested by bringing this thing to market as it is going to be the market's abject rejection of your attempt to belong as a founder and CEO of a venture-backed company. That is inherently the most difficult thing that you're going to face, and it becomes more difficult the more your innovation survives and thrives, because it will feel just incredibly unjust that you aren't getting the same opportunities as your male peers. So, but fuck them and keep going.
Good on you. What is it? 3% of all female teams raise venture capital, which is so small. No, it's very small. It's between 2 to 3. That's where you see the numbers, and you go, so 97 to 98% going to non-all female teams. So how is that inequality?
Is that women? Is that founding teams with a woman in it, or just because
all women?
Yeah, so 0, basically. A disgustingly small amount. Yeah, it's just small. That, like, so wrong. So wrong.
It's hard. It's really hard. So of course it's hard, because statistically it tells you it is hard,
And then you've got to calibrate, right? Oh, it's the reason why, because the argument is, there's deal flow, but they're not good. We can get our percentage of women founders backed by us to X, but then over the course of deal flow, it goes back to Y, and we can't figure it out. I'm like, because you stop backing them, and because you don't see what they are doing, but the inference is that they're not as good, right? And that then again, now we are back calibrating whether or not I have the right to complain about this problem, because maybe the reason why I'm not getting backed is because my company is not great. And that, like, get out of town. Do you know what I mean? Like, it takes a lot of confidence to say that, but, like, get out of town? Like, no, I wholeheartedly reject it. And you can't tell me that women are so inherently shit at running businesses that only 3% of them are worth funding, because the data on that is actually the opposite. We are better. We make more money. We generate better revenue. We do it with less money investment. Like, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah. What technologies are you most excited about for the future, Olympia?
Horses and carts. I'm really into autonomous farming systems. So I think there's some really cool autonomous farming type decks and different ways of doing different types of autonomous farming out there. That's really cool. Really into a company called Rapid Aim, which is doing IoT and remote sensing of insects, pests to prevent overspraying and saving farmers a lot of money. That's run by absolutely kick-ass female founder called Nancy Shellhorn. I'm into underwater robots, so the guys at Hullbot are always a favourite of mine. Anything that's climate tech related, but I tend to gravitate to stuff that's solving climate now rather than stuff that, in 10 years after $1 billion worth of investment, you'll see some results and they may work. And there's a lot of really cool Australian tech out there right now that I think matters.
That's actually a good point as well. It's because of a lot of deep tech is harder. It's not until later, but there are a lot that's already available now and solving the problems now, right? So
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. What's your number one sustainability or circular economy tip or advice to provide to us as we're closing off?
Get rid of plastic, all of it. Glad wrap, plastic bottles, plastic containers, plastic bags, plastic. Get rid of it. Don't buy it if you can. Buy packaging that has I don't buy pasta in the bag. I buy it in the box. Don't remove as much plastic from your life as possible. We didn't have it hardly at all before the 80s, early 80s. Suddenly it is pervasive to our entire life. It is killing our planet. Get rid of it. It's affecting our soils, our water, and our food. The best way to stop is through consumer choices. Stop plastic.
Wow. That's a good one, actually. That's a very good one.
I do what I can.
I lived in Japan for 2 years, and the packaging in Japan is outrageous. I have to say, it's like you buy chocolate and then the entire box is covered in packaging, and then each of it is individually wrapped, and I go, why? But why?
The packaging has packaging.
Packaging has packaging, and I think that needs to stop. I mean, I think it's beautiful, but
no,
I don't know. I think it's a bit. I like that one. And last question: how can others contact you to learn more?
LinkedIn's easiest to get hold of me. Sometimes I answer them myself. Sometimes I answer myself. But LinkedIn, GOTERRA is on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I love meeting new people. So it's the best and fastest way to find us. And we'd love to chat about pretty much anything.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to connect with you. I don't think we're connected yet, but I will connect with you. But
bring it on.
Olympia, thank you so much for joining us on Emerging Tech Unpacked. I had loved our conversation. We talked about maggot farm workers. We spoke about women. We spoke about outspoken women. We spoke about the lack of funding. We spoke about technology. We spoke about wanting to change food and needing to do something about our food security, which I think is really important, especially the circular economy. Thank you for your inspiring journey from farm to founder, which I think has been an incredible story to tell. And I really loved our conversation. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure.
What a fascinating conversation. Huge thanks to Olympia Yarger for her incredible insights. I hope this conversation has challenged you to think differently about waste management, sustainability, and perhaps even your own perception of insects. Whether you're inspired by technological innovation, the environmental impact, or simply the resilience to build something truly groundbreaking, there's something in Olympia's story for all of us. And her parting advice to reduce plastic in our lives is something we can all act on immediately. Olympia's journey from unconventional farmer to tech innovator is a testament to what happens when you combine relentless determination, radical candor, and a refusal to shrink yourself to fit outdated expectations. I also admire her for her willingness to speak her mind, even when it's uncomfortable. This has helped her break barriers and secured millions in funding, especially when the odds are against her as a female founder. If you're listening today and you've ever been told that you're too direct or too outspoken, like I have been told throughout my entire career, let our example remind you. Those very qualities are your greatest strengths. The world needs more voices like mine, like hers, and like yours. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review and share it with your friends and networks so they can enjoy it too. I would also very much appreciate it if you can support our podcast with a monthly donation and join our community on Patreon so I can cover my podcast expenses and keep this show and our important mission of profiling incredible diverse perspectives and fascinating emerging tech going. For more information about the latest episodes and how you can contact us for sponsorship, promotion, and guest speaking collaborations, visit our website, emergingtechunpacked.com. We are available in audio format on Spotify and Apple Podcast. You can also watch us on YouTube, and we have bonus video content there. Make sure to tap the notification bell so you will be informed of the latest episode drops. We are active on social media, so make sure to subscribe, like, and follow us on our social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook to stay updated with the latest news and content. To get in contact with me, you can find me on LinkedIn by searching for Lucy Lin or on my website, lucy-lin.com. We welcome all feedback and will be very grateful if you can help us grow and spread the word by forwarding this episode to a friend and giving us a 5-star review. Thank you for your attention. I hope I've unpacked insect farming and robotics for you to better understand this fascinating and squeamish future of food waste solutions. My name is Lucy Lin, and thank you for listening to the Emerging Tech Unpacked podcast. Until next time, keep speaking up, keep pushing boundaries, and keep saying no to plastic. See you in the next episode soon.